Hey, what's up, folks? We are about to do the esophagus histology. That's right, microanatomy of the esophagus, the tube that connects your pharynx to your stomach. Okay, what we're looking at here is a longitudinal section of a little chunk of the esophagus. So everything you see right here is esophagus stuff. All right? Now, in this view, our lumen is basically going to be right here. Okay, we see the tissue lining the lumen right here as well. And what we're going to notice is there are four basic layers to the wall of the esophagus. So number one right there is the mucosa. All right, number one is the mucosa. So always right next to the lumen, we're going to have the mucosa. Number two, right here, switching colors to purple. Number two, appropriately called the submucosa. Number three is this rather large and thick layer here. It is called the Muscularis Externa. I bet you can guess it is made out of muscle. Muscularis Externa. And then our final layer, the last layer of them all, is right here. And this layer is called the Adventitia. So this is the basic structural setup of the esophageal wall. And I got great news for you. The stomach is going to have the same basic architecture. Small intestine, same basic setup. Large intestine, same thing. The only thing that varies is there'll be some small differences within these layers. And sometimes we don't have an adventitia. Instead, we have a layer called the serosa. But more on all of these in a moment. All right. So let's clear all this writing here. And let's talk about this first layer, which is the mucosa. So there's the mucosa right there. Now, obviously, you can see there are 1, 2, 3 sublayers. I probably should have done it on this side, so it could have been like 1, 2, 3. Anyhow, that doesn't matter. The first one right there is the epithelium. Now, in this case, check out the multiplicity of layers here. Multiple layers. So what that means is that epithelium is stratified, and it is stratified squamous for protection, of course. So, first part of the mucosa is the epithelium, which we see right here, and that is stratified squamous. Number two, let's clear away that mess. Number two is this gray layer right in here. This layer right here is the Lamina Propria. Sometimes it's called the Lamina Propria Mucosa, which means it is the layer belonging to the mucosa. It is a layer of loose connective tissue. It is going to support that epithelium, says the Lamina Propria. Now, deep to that, or sorry, not deep to that, superficial to that. What am I saying? Superficial to that, we have this skinny layer here made of smooth muscle. That layer right there is the Muscularis Mucosa, the muscle of the mucosa, in other words. This layer of smooth muscle, its job is to shake and wiggle and jiggle the lining of the esophagus, so that stuff does not get, trapped within mucus there. All right. Now, those three basic sublayers are also found in the stomach. and in the small intestine, and in the large intestine as well, which makes life a little bit easier. It's still not easy. Life ain't easy, but it's a little bit easier with this common setup. Okay, let's erase all that. Let's go. Let's stick with this picture for a little bit longer. Let's talk submucosa. Submucosa is right here. The submucosa is kind of like a bigger, denser version of the Lamina Propria. It is made of dense connective tissue. It is where we will find blood vessels. There's a vein. There's an artery. We'll find nerves. I like to think of it as holding the plumbing and the wiring of the lining. Now, in this case, what we see also are these glands. These are submucosal mucus glands, which secrete mucus. The mucus goes up through this duct and out into the lumen. We see other openings for mucus glands as well. So that is our submucosa. Now we got our Muscularis Externa. The Muscularis Externa is typically made of two sublayers. Let's jump over to this other side here. We have one sublayer right here and then another one right there. And that first one is called the inner circular Muscularis Externa. The next one, so number 2, is going to be the outer longitudinal Muscularis Externa. And these guys, basically what they do, I'm going to give you a one-word job of what they do. They are involved in peristalsis. Peristalsis. Yeah, moving stuff through that digestive tube. Okay, let's get rid of that. Let's do our final layer here. Final layer is this guy right here. It is an Adventitia. Now you may recall that your vessels, your arteries, and your veins had an Adventitia. It is the anchoring layer. We got to lock our esophagus to our trachea, to our heart, to other organs, and the Adventitia is the connective tissue layer that does this job for us. All right. Let's see if we can look at a real esophagus now. Here is a real esophagus. Let's get that out of there. There we go. In this real esophagus, I am going to see several things. I am going to see my mucosa right here. And I'm going to see my submucosa right there. I do see a mucus gland right here. And then I see my Muscularis Externa right there. Both the circular and the longitudinal layer. Now, I see my epithelium in my mucosa. There it is. Beautiful. I see my Lamina Propria as well. I see my Muscularis Mucosa as well, right in there. That cute little guy. All right. So we see all that nicely on this esophagus. Here we have zoomed in just on the stratified squamous epithelium. Boom, boom, right there. Underneath it, we got the Lamina Propria right there. All right. Next up, zooming in on the epithelium again, right here. And on the Lamina Propria right here, I do see a duct for a mucus gland as well. Cool. And actually, that was the last esophagus one. So, yeah, we're done with the esophagus. Cool. See you next time. Bye.